Hello everyone. Today's talk would be about what we can do after we have gotten the highest certificate in psychology. So let us assume that we have learned everything there is that is very linear and just passed down through history and whatnot to man. And kind of by looking at it, realizing that that is one template of reality. When I say one template, that means sometimes when you look at what you're certain about, you're actually accepting an image, but in actuality, when you go through the image, that image does not exist. Because it exists based on other subtler particles. For example, the atom is made of smaller particles. And regardless of what entity you look at, the constructions of things, in other words, once you have understood something through a constructive awareness to it, you will see that a destructive awareness also gives you meaning. So similar to how we are creating things to have meaning, also as things fall apart, it's also a new creation of meaning. And so beings who become aware of this realize that the way they think life is transitioning is not the way it is. So their awareness to a sense that sensory perception is not an actuality in the sense that when you look at who's here, you see nothing. But that as you gaze with a depth that you have never before, you will see that principles of how you are acknowledging your mind, in other words, all of the things you have learned from your psychology degree, will suddenly, in a sense, be as if they all made sense, but only in a certain framework. And so what happens to a picture when the frame's suddenly taken off? Well, the picture can either be framed in a different way, or it can expand. And so this is the point where we see our society is actually a picture that is framed in such a solid way. Now, this frame, based on the colors of the painter and how much the canvas wants to expand, we see that it's changing. And so as the structures of man's mind change, his awareness to self shifts in the sense that consciousness was an intelligence that never needed to be formed, but was always an awareness of form. So what that means is that it's a very curious thing, because you wonder about the curve of your experience as your reality shifts by your focus. For example, similar to how a camera can focus into things, we can look at ants and we can also look at stars, and so we can also see that it's as if a triangle has formed, and the last corner is our mind. You are connecting things, and in that connection, you're realizing how things are disconnected, but at the same time can be present. What that means is all disconnections can be seen through a horizontal view, in the sense that you think there is an old man with a beard above the horizon, or you can see that the vertical dimension is simply suggesting it doesn't matter what forms you're holding. It's like, for example, you're not just holding this physical body, you're also holding anything that is relevant to this, as if you're also holding the world in which your body is. It's as if your presence cannot just be of your body, it's the presence that is present in the world. So man must realize that his worlds are being known to him based on how much he has looked at the concept of what outside means. And what outside means is that, guys, I'm talking at a depth that is not conventional. And what I mean by that is that I am talking, perhaps, to audience members who I find have the capacity to, for example, to go in a cave in the Himalayas and absorb into their inner experience and just reveal many treasures on the ability of the being beyond the ideology and the conception of its humanity. You see, it's very important that before you try to look at truth, you look at what is here. And when you look at what is here, you see that if you look too deep, it's as if normal reality is not real for you in the same way. So how would I communicate this? It's as if, it's like when you were a kid, you saw cartoons. Then you grew up and you were like, that intensity of experience was so unreal compared to the reality I can experience from, let's say, a 3D, let's say, action film. So what I'm simply saying is that your awareness is actually different intensities of experience, all made aware through one moment, and in a sense one particle that is never parted. So it's as if we looked at our experience, we would see that geometry is not just design and the imagery that is kept in which we are acknowledging the design, but geometry is also how nothing comes into conception. So a lot of the times, many geometric expressions, many of those shapes in geometry that they see, and for example, many people have said sacred geometry, what that means is that that symbol is meaningful because it was an explanation without words. And so when we have an explanation without words with this geometry, it's in other words an image technology. So what that means is that symbol can be a vehicle in the sense that you can pour meaning into it. So what that means is I can tell you I'm a good guy, I'm a bad guy, and regardless, you're the one pouring images of what good means to you and bad means to you. It's as if your mind is saying, okay, that's good, that's bad, no? And so your mind is going through the sense of not filtration, but self-awareness. And self-awareness is a dissolution of the experience that was never there. So guys, you need to recognize what I'm speaking about is it's as if we are beings that are experiencing externality, but when you look at how we are experiencing light in our sight, it's as if everything is our own internal phenomena. So it's as if when we look at others, suddenly they're objects. When we look at ourselves, oh my God, it's like this subjective, unknown abyss that is spiraling into greater meaning by simply letting go of its smaller aspects, by dissolving into a greater flow. You know. So regardless, you kind of see that the mind of man initiates itself into its own dissolution to then be aware that the intelligence of the mind was never from the mind. It's that moment you step out of the car and you realize that was never your body. That was just a vehicle. And so similarly, you see that thought can become a body for you if you take an image and just pour in your own meaning. So what that means is meditation in actuality is you in this game of life stopping and just sitting down on the ground and just looking at how things are moving. It's as if that moment where you were suddenly thrown into a Hunger Games scenario, but you don't know what's going on, and so you must look around. You must come to your present moment to then uncover the next step into whatever reality you're going. And so when I say present moment, that means it's direct experiential. It's that moment where you're running, for example, in the woods with an arrow that can make an arrow into a spear, and you simply see with a bow that can make an arrow into a spear. But you can see that consciousness does not need definition, but it creates it as simply as if I was to write something down, or as simply as how reality was created. Reality is always a simple origin, similar to how any writer knows that when he wrote the book, it wasn't hard for him, because that's how he could write the book. If it was too hard, he couldn't write it. So he wrote it with a certain ease, and many great writers, in a sense, lose themselves in the work, in the sense that it's as if like their mind is in a daydream-like perception, which is actually a multidimensionality. Mr.Within is really here to explore daydreaming beyond calling it dreaming. It's not daydreaming. You're still present here. When we acknowledge our multidimensionality with what I have, what Mr.Within has in a sense called, I guess, in a sense, room theory. Let's call it that. So pretty much the idea is that when I looked at life and the way I had it from my own experience, I did not see images, but I was aware of presence. And so it was as if I knew and I felt, and on some subtler level, it's as if I went to a room, I could feel all the presences present. But if it was not relevant, it would not come. And so how much are you requiring relativity in your life, and how much are you willing to go through the irrelevance and to, in a sense, suddenly find yourself in new platforms of perception? What I mean is that the terrace on the 4th floor is not as good as the terrace on the 9th floor. And that was simply what I understood when I was young, and our apartment was on, the 5th floor, actually. My apartment was on the 5th floor. Anyways, so it's very important for us to see that Regardless of how much you feel you have collected ideas that feel true to you, your feelings can change in an instant. The human mind is fragile. We have people who are jumping off bridges, and we also have people where there was this one guy who went and talked to so many people who were about to commit suicide on bridges and just took them out for a tea at this, invited them for tea at his place, you know. Human communication will save humanity. Because human communication is self-awareness. It's as if us being aware of what's wrong is the solution, not some external phenomena. Because our experience of externality is actually very hard to understand in this platform. It's as if like we need 3,000 years of more cultural shifts to kind of understand that we are always experiencing multidimensionality, but it's just that dimensions also grow. So what that means is similar to how we are growing and we are transcending, the plane of existence is also moving. It's as if when I say plane of existence, it's a moving plane. We're flying. And so this plane shifts in experience in regards to where you are internally. And when I say internally, that shouldn't mean anything. That's simply what is within you. It's your own personal knowing. It's that moment where you look at life and you see that you're it. And so your life is never just yours, because that sense of you, that sense of individuality is coming from the collective. And so psychology is choosing to keep, or not choosing to keep, but using terminology in its own chess game, when at the end of the chess game, all the pieces went back in the box. We must recognize that right now, the most important thing is experience and awareness to communication that is, in a sense, becoming your experience. And so there's this quote I share often, and there's this man, this very wise Sufi poet named Hafiz, and he has a quote, and he says, "The words you speak become the house you live in." And what he's simply saying is that what you're communicating in this existence is affecting how your perception is perceiving itself. Forget about placebo, forget about individual relationships being things that you can explain individual relationships. I can get a piece of cake and cut it up to the point that there's literally no cake, you know, and try to see, it's as if like, you know, my certainty should not be in shape, but the awareness to shape. And that's what's important, you know. The greatest decisions of our leaders has been ones done with a great trust in life. The reason the guy did a great thing or said a great speech was because he was engaged. It's as if something in his life was driving him. He could not sit down. He had to run, and his voice had to roar with the presence of 10,000 lions. You will see that reality is not limited because you are not limited. But if you believe yourself to be limited, if you have a story in which you are a very comfortable character in, that could be dangerous. And what I mean by that is that you need to give yourself certain moments throughout the day where you have, I don't want to even call it meditation, let's call it for now, deep self-contemplation. You're sitting down, observing all movement. It's as if you have just understood the beauty and the principle of the fact that when you're still, movement is perceived, and when you move, stillness is perceived. And so when you still, in a day where you've been moving, you suddenly see that you're giving yourself an awareness to how your mind is absorbing things. And let me tell you what that is. I walk throughout the day, and if I choose to really do external things, and when I say external things, that means if I really decide to engage into just movement, I will see that I will be observing it through a greater stillness that is occupying more points in space through its dance. And what I mean by that is that reality is perceived to be there because the knowing is transparently keeping all that is. And this knowing is actually your greater knowing. It's a self-communication. It's that moment that we realize we were all children of Gaia. It's that moment where poetry becomes our salvation in a world that has been so mechanically dulled down. You know, it's as if, why are we worried about extinction? Before you should think about extinction, you should think about how dull your day is, you know? I don't think that far. The people who are thinking about heaven and hell and stuff, the afterlife, it's not a wise thing to do in the sense of communicating and trying to see what it is. Your mind has an ability to take one idea and, in a sense, in a fractal manner, relate it. It's as if like as above, so below, and as below, so above. It's as if like our presence is our greater sense of collectivity. It's as if the minute I put my hand between those two mirrors facing one another, infinite mirrors were found. Infinite galaxies were present. Observance no longer needed to control ideology, but the flow of the natural presence of the being as its own existential intelligence simply displays your movement, in the sense that your intuition kind of becomes this flow where you're walking throughout the day and your mind is silent. There is no thought, but your action is intense. And that absorption I was talking about is actually you, in a sense, for a second sitting down. Let's say if you've been running throughout the whole day, doing certain activities, suddenly you decide to sit on a park, and let's say you're a busy CEO, you will see when you close your eyes and just breathe and be aware of your breath, it's as if for a second you are forgetting about everything and bringing the immediate focus of what is real to your breathing. As you do, you get an awareness to body. As you get an awareness to body, it's as if you have utilized with a clear sense of awareness of what is present to navigate into what could be future and what could be past. And so you will see that person sitting down and having that nice moment of just being aware of it, of his or her being, suddenly was led to an understanding. It's as if for a second the CEO in that moment, closing his eyes, stepped down, became the observance of every act he did, as if he stood behind himself while he was doing this act. So what I mean by that is, for example, you will do things in life, certain points, and you will observe them after, but you will see that when you were doing it, you knew the consequence. When the man knows the consequence of his actions, that is fortune telling. That's it. When you simply know it, it doesn't matter who you go to. And that's what shamans understood, that the matrix of this reality and how the grids are present are not ones that can be understood or tapped into through an individual intelligence, but only with an awareness that the collective is looking through the intelligence, through the individual. I would like to share a quote by Albert Camus, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This man was very wise, a very wise human being. And he has this quote where the quote goes, "I would rather live my life as if there is a God and die to find out there isn't, than live as if there isn't and to die to find out that there is." Guys, if we take these words and we simply see the memes of these ideas, their beginning, we will see that he's suggesting that from his experience, that he would rather see life to have a collective intelligence rather than to just accept an individual one, then realize it was all collective. Because if you accept that there is no collective intelligence, it's not that there's anything bad, but in how I perceive it, how Mr. Within perceives it, you are choosing to not accept an atmosphere of possibility in which your mind can then create your existence in. So you are limiting yourself by creating the veil. It's as if some people try to rip the veil, others like to cover themselves with it and just bask in the warmth of their illusion. So, in a sense, what he's communicating, he would rather live like that than as if there isn't any God. So, I will read the quote again. "I would rather live my life as if there is a God and to die, find out there isn't." So he understands, in my view, that he would rather see that there's nothing impossible, even though some things do look impossible, right? But there are those that accept impossibility without exploring it, and because they have not explored it, they will not look at the possibilities. What that means is that if you know what you're doing, you don't need advice, so if you are ignorant, you will close your ears when they need to be open. And what that means is that you need to confront everything and not just accept that you, in this vast, infinitely changing and expanding world, that you are a point that is not connected to any line. It's impossible. It will become impossible at some point to see that we ever thought we were not connected to reality. This plane of existence projects itself in a way where the more we experience it directly, the more clear it becomes who we are for ourselves. And you know, it's that moment, for example, there was this documentary, I think it was called The Sacred Science, where they took these people who had health problems from the city into this shamanic setting, and the shaman gave them medicine and whatnot. And regardless of what happens in the movie, you guys need to go check it out. It's a very good documentary. It's suggesting that the intensity in reality is a difference in which, when you look at psychology, all branches of knowledge could never explain what's hidden under the roots. So only in being the knowledge that you're aware of, you will recognize that you're never just this, but you're your whole moment of being. When you get an awareness of your whole moment of being, you take existential responsibility. And if you take very mystical existential responsibility, you will become aware that there is no such thing as us calling it conscious or unconscious. Everything exists, everything is present. We just need to be aware of our transitions in a sense that there's multidimensionality. Multidimensionality might not be a reality for many now, but internally it may be. What that means is externally we might not have figured it out with our sciences, but internally many people are having experiences that is beyond the limitations of the physical world. So it's as if an internal dimension is open and has totally shown that the layout of the architecture of the mind was not the same, in the sense that there is no mind. So what that means is I am choosing to call that river a river and choose to see that it has only one direction. But no, the river belongs to the whole forest, to the whole planet, to the whole cosmos. And how could concentric circles never be in the same circle? And so it's very important to realize it's time for you to develop a fractal mind, but a fractal mind that is being aware of his externality with the grace of the presence of his internal dimensions. So this is where mindfulness and meditation and this kind of pursuit becomes significant and is needed in your life. So if I'm saying this right now and a part of you is like, okay, this seems like a step, don't try to follow another thing. Just simply see what information do you have, for example, about what you know, and use that as something in which, as you are looking at that individual branch of information which you're certain of, you're expanding that certainty. So many people think that it's as if in one sense of space and time you're certain of what's real, then suddenly in another sense of space and time you're not. So what is shifting is only the objects of observance that are experiencing space and time in a certain way. But you are beyond that limitation in the sense that you are the awareness of it. You are the awareness that is keeping your reality here, because you are so mighty that the gods gave you a gift when they gave man an ability to blink. It's as if they were like, let him blink. So that when he blinks, he will see that his world can suddenly change in an instant, you know? But if we blink too fast and suddenly start looking at iPhones and stop forgetting the fact that we're this biological being who needs to be able and contribute in the greatest way it can in the sense of allowing its natural rhythm to express, you will not be interested in illusion by seeing that you are the one who is keeping the illusion. So if I say the word illusion, you will see that there will be certain dynamics of mind. Some people will be illusion, ha ha ha, illusion, are you crazy? I could feel this beer in my hand, you know. And there's some people who, when they say illusion, it's as if, no, it's not elusive in the sense that there is no physicality. It's as if I see the beer in my hand, but who is this life that is in my eyes? What is within me that is both meaningful and in an instant can be meaningless if I transition through perhaps a car accident. You know, it's very important for you to recognize that life is a story, and the able being is an awareness beyond the story. It's that moment where illusion was never there because you were never eluded. And so, conceptually, we must not let ourselves get chained to what we are certain of. So what that means is you might not have looked at how your conditioning is, and when someone asks you something, your certainty is just based on your first immediate look, you know? So what that means is if your life is a book, you've started reading it since the beginning of your birth, and you've gone a couple of chapters. Now, some parts of the book, you know, let's say you either didn't understand a word or like suddenly you were just very, let's say, tired or distracted, you would see that regardless of that change, regardless of that transition, reality is still kept here. And as it is kept here, you will find the potential that really walks by infinity. You need to simply see that in any reality, even that psychology certificate or doctorate is hanging on a wall. And that wall is hanging there because you've paid your mortgage. And if you were not self-aware, there would be no pillars. So self-awareness is the fact that you are given the existential opportunity in just seeing what your moment of life is, and then from that certainty, expanding your certainty in the sense that your experience is flowing. So all those people who are suffering from depression, stress, and just are looking for a happiness that seems to be a step always away, or a step, as if they feel they're a step behind, you know, or they feel it's a step ahead, you need to see that don't let yourself be so convinced that trying to plan your life is the best route when you have not observed what life means. The wise man said patience is a virtue, and in a world that's changing too fast, our minds need to be patient in their self-exploration. You need to see that in this life, your significance is actually an internal dimension. So the values you see in things is because something in your awareness to this plane of existence is keeping your attention there. And so when your attention is being kept, it's as if you are the second dimension in a third dimensional being, let's say, in a three-dimensional being. So what that means is it's like you're aware of a sense of purpose, but you're not seeing your totality. And when a being cannot see its totalities, but is shown to have greater unknown dimensions, it is very important to let all knowing crumble and let the sands of time to completely fall through our fingers. And after we have looked at all conception, whether it's in a notebook, holy book, or on YouTube, we will begin to take a responsibility in a manner as if we have been sitting on this planet and we've just realized how we can love it. You know, it's like all this time we thought we had love. No. When the society, when a group of beings get together and they create establishments dictated by the laws of love and compassion, you will see that we will, as a society, we will not attract even presences that are, it's as if the planet is our planet, you know? And what that means is that what we do with it projects our universe. So when you see that you're going towards more of a understanding of collective consciousness, you are taking an existential responsibility that you're like, okay, I'm not just existing as Bob, I'm existing as life. And everything is alive. Every moment exists. And as every moment exists, non-existence is an ability to, in a sense, to have first existed. How could you not be here when you are judging here by here? And so you will see that reality has glitches because at first it's your own projection. It's as if you're saying, I know this guy, I'm pretty sure I know this guy, but you don't know anything about that person. And this is why we shouldn't judge books by cover, but we should also not try to look at covers. Why are you looking at the cover? Just read the book. Why are you, don't judge any book. Just open a book and read it. We must understand that if you are a designer or an engineer, the future of the planet is more in your expression. So in what you produce and give out. If you're someone who's a user of technology, your greatest contribution is to clearly communicate what is happening to you. What that means is if every human being, what they knew innately within themselves, to be beyond and right and wrong, but to be the perfect existential allowance in that moment, in other words, perfect expression, you will see that you are being kept by a clarity that is observing not just the linear, but also the non-linear and working with what is beyond that. So do not even think that you're limited, because if you do, you will be creating your own world, which is constantly being refabricated by you in the now. It is very important right now we instantly absorb the teachings in ancient wisdom and not just make meditation just like eating, not just making meditation like a shower for the mind in the morning or in the afternoon, but simply making the awareness of you more significant. It's as if you're not getting fulfillment for just going to the club on Friday, but you're getting fulfillment in the sense that every moment you are elevating your being and the being of all that is. So you are contributing. Suddenly charity becomes meaningful because that's what has value. Do you know? When you realize this reality is being kept by communication, your choice of happiness or the lack of it is all in how you are interpreting communication. How you're interpreting sound is why you are getting bothered by words. So self-awareness is the only solution when your problem was just that you walked in a room and you just forgot to walk out of it. The entrance and the exit are one. The reason this externality can only be seen as an illusion is because you know yourself beyond it. And so, if twin sons were born to say that they were of the same glow, the Father existed in its own in the infinite steps of its children. Because you will see that at first you feel like an individual being, because that's how much you're able to confront it. You feel like you're an individual being who is also in an intermediary-like way, as if there are more dimensions, also present in other dimensions. But then you will see in actuality, no, it's just that how you were interpreting what was there was inaccurate because it wasn't the total scene. So when I just judged Mona Lisa by, for example, her smile, I forgot to look at and see what her eyes were communicating, you know. It's very important to allow yourself to see yourself clearly, and that is a gift you give to yourself. And Mr. Within's gift was always self-expression, self-understanding. Existential responsibility should move to a point where when you walk, your peace, your own sense of how you have cultivated peace and, in a sense, an awareness to your presence will be your contribution. Because, guys, if the system is flawed, there's no need to contribute to a flawed system. And what that means is that if it's not making sense for you, it seems to be a flawed system. So the certainty does not lie in the spectrum. There's something wrong with the spectrum of consideration. And what that is that hope has always been that moment where we've realized we were never limited. And so regardless of our experience of limitation, we have moved beyond ideas that have created walls. And these walls are keeping frames that are unnecessary, because the person with the psychology certificate would understand that the end of him getting his degree, he never needed it, in the sense that you observing that psychology degree on your wall means you are not doing your work. You thinking in terms of solid shapes in which you are not allowing yourself for that particle to be seen in a new way, means that your sense of creativity is choosing a sense of fixed reality to only contribute to. So it's as if you're given, let's say, the greatest tool of all, which is your self-awareness as mind and also what is beyond mind. You will simply see that complexity never existed. And so a crazy person was never crazy, for personality was never so convincing. Remember who you are, and you will see you will no longer need psychology or theories. You will have cultivated an awareness to life that is clear in its movement. So that person who thought his whole life his intuition was exciting, no, it moves beyond intuition. So it's intuition at first because you're holding on to relationships, and so it's just you seeing something beyond that relationship. But as you dissolve from an experience of the character who's lost in a setting to the storyteller, you become the experience of the setting. It's as if that moment where that storyteller was talking about the bad wolf, I saw a wolf in a forest. And so it's as if there was a projection of realness by how I took the word in. So your reality should be always polished with self-awareness, self-remembrance, and self-reflection. Give yourself all of existence to see that there were never any hands. Much blessings and namaste.